There is so much that people can gain by saying yes or by putting themselves out there and facing either their fears or their anxiety or even just showing up for themselves. And I think for me, that's what mock trial has been all about. That's what a couple of the other organizations that I have been in are all about, is really taking that leap.
Hi, Wildcats. Welcome back to the UAZ podcast. My name is Rebecca, and I'm hosting today's show with
Nicole, Camacho,
and Riley Giles.
And today we have a special guest. Her name is
Ellery Pendergrass.
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, thanks for having me.
So here's a short bio for Ellery Pendergrass. They go by he, they, and they are a senior at the WA Franke Honors College heading into his fourth year in Arizona mock. Ellery is majoring in human rights and French, and after graduating he plans to go into law school to pursue a career in appeal civil rights litigation. Outside of mock trials, Ellery is researching barriers facing asylum seekers in international conflicts and is working with the Southern Arizona community at CAT Coalition to coordinate trap, neuter, release volunteer opportunities for college students. When he is not working, Ellery enjoys spending time with his cats, traveling, and marshaling car races.
Ellery. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and we are really excited to have you. Thank you also for being part of so many initiatives here at the University of Arizona. So what were you hoping to get out of all these wonderful experiences?
I think that for me, when I first came to the university, to be totally frank, I wasn't super excited about being in Tucson in the first place. I had a couple different opportunities that I could have gone to. I've lived in Arizona my whole life, so when I ultimately decided to come here, I just wanted to make the best of it because at the time, I wasn't super happy about being in Arizona after being here for the first 18 years of my life. So getting involved in clubs and organizations was really important for me to find my place in the community on campus, but then also to just kind of figure out who I was existing in this space that I didn't really expect myself to be in the first place.
Yeah, that sounds similar to, for the first time I came here to Arizona, I didn't like Arizona in Tucson specifically because I come from Uganda and, the way the idea people have about Tucson and everything is kind of different. And so when I came, I was like, what's going on here? I don't want to be here. But, as I was getting more involved with school activities and doing amazing stuff, I was like, wow, this is really a beautiful place to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely agree. Yeah, I think that not everyone enjoys Arizona as a whole or Tucson specifically, but it definitely has a charm to it, especially once you've lived here long enough that you can start to find your niche.
So among the activities that you've just done here at the university, which one has been your best so far?
I think I'd have to say that mock trial has been the best organization I've been involved with. It's the only organization that I've been with for all of my 4 years here at the university, and I've just been able to see my role in the program grow and develop kind of alongside my own just changes, which is something really special. So even though each little activity that I'm involved in definitely has a place, mock trial probably has the most special place in my heart.
You are majoring in human rights and French, but when we were setting up, you mentioned that your first major was film. What made you change your major?
Yeah, when I first came to the university, I was dead set on getting a film degree and then moving to Los Angeles to pursue a career in film. I actually spent the entirety of my freshman year majoring in film, taking film classes, but in order to come here, it was a conversation with my parents about how even if I wanted to go into film, the way that they would help me along and support me in going to college, getting an education and whatnot, was if I had an additional major. And so they had suggested, it's technically global studies, but I have a human rights emphasis, so I just call it human rights. And they ended up being right because as I started taking more classes in the human rights side of things or in my French classes, which I was originally minoring in, I just found that I was so much more invigorated by the topics that I was talking about and the people that I was interacting with in those law-focused or political science-focused classes, or even when I was just speaking French with my professors, because my dad speaks French, so it's always been a way for me to connect with him. I felt like I really connected to the material that I was learning in those majors in the first place, whereas with film, it was interesting to learn about, and I definitely had a good experience in the major. I mean, I met one of my best friends who we've now lived together for the past 2 years because of that major, but I didn't really feel the calling to film that I thought I originally did when I first came here, and now it's funny looking back knowing that even though I didn't want to see it at the time, my parents were absolutely right about what they saw in like my skills and how it could apply to a career, which I just wasn't ready to hear when I was 17 and graduating high school.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me in high school. I had a whole different plan, but I kind of just grew into my childhood dreams was to become a lawyer. So as I was growing, in high school I had different plans, but then now in college I found out that that was actually my passion. So my question for you is, how has your experience in mock trials changed you from when you joined from now?
Oh my gosh. Mock trial was probably one of the biggest reasons that I realized how much I really loved what was originally my secondary major, because when I first joined mock trial, the goal was never to become an attorney. It wasn't really something that I was doing for career purposes. But when I started actually learning about what mock trial is and what attorneys do, I just loved the critical thinking and the logic that came with it. It was fascinating to me. And so even though initially I had just joined mock trial because I thought that being a witness and performing and traveling to all these different tournaments would be something fun that I could do in my free time, it really grew into kind of helping me figure out, one, like who I am and what I want to do with my life, but then two, seeing the types of people that I like interacting with. So many of the people that I look up to have been my captains in mock trial or my coaches in mock trial, and even some of my peers, like when we're competing on the same teams. I love seeing what they're doing and learning from them, whether it's in a specific mock trial capacity about how I can be better in my role as a competitor or in leadership positions, but then also just in everyday life, because so much of what we do is applicable to pretty much anything, whether it's public speaking or critical thinking or even just learning how to speak up for yourself and speak up for things you believe in when sometimes that can be really difficult. I really feel like the community that I've been a part of and that I've seen grow has fostered that both in me and then in everyone else around me. So seeing both the development of myself over the past 4 years, which is astronomical, but then the development of the program alongside that, it's just been super special and rewarding.
Yes, mock trial comes with lots of public speaking. So were
Yes.
you really bad at that in the start, or were you naturally good at public speaking?
I don't think I'd say that I was naturally good at public speaking, but I did have a lot of practice with it coming out of high school. I was a theater kid in high school. I started in middle school, and I just loved it. I loved the acting side of things, and initially it was not very easy for me. I would have the worst anxiety that would build up in my chest before I would go on stage in high school. And it's definitely dissipated over time and definitely much quicker now that I've been in mock trial for so long. I still get a little nervous when I'm doing public speaking, and I think it's hard to say that anyone can truly, completely alleviate that unless, I don't know, they're just a fiend for public speaking. But for me, it's definitely been a learning curve, and mock trial has helped that, but I did have experience with it beforehand.
Yeah, also that's really very true when you were talking about public speaking. I'll say okay, some people really are really born natural public speakers, but even so, it depends with the context of where you are, what you're talking about.
Definitely.
And that's where, I mean, also depends with the changes and all that kind of makes you to be either a very good public speaker or not, but it's still it's a learning process. You gotta learn it takes
Yes.
it takes a while, but even though it's I would say like it's like a lifelong journey that you really have to embark on.
Absolutely.
And it seems like you've had like a very great experience when it comes to mock trial. So what has been one of the most memorable experience so far?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard to pick just one because I feel like every year there's something special and something that was just so memorable. But I mean, heading into my 4th year with the program, I think that the most memorable or most prominent memory that I have with them was probably just this last year. I took on the position of captaining a team, which I'd done before, but in our spring semester, we go to tournaments where we can advance as opposed to during the fall semester where we just go to individual school-hosted tournaments. And for the first time since I've been in the program, but my understanding is that it was for the first time in 5 years, our program advanced teams beyond our local regionals, and we went on to the opening round championship series, it's basically just the level in between regionals and nationals. But it was such an incredible experience seeing both my hard work paying off as the captain of that team, where I was responsible for mentoring all of these different people and working with them and really developing this relationship and culture that's helpful, but then also just there's a lot of team bonding that goes into that. And so seeing the entire team's work that we put in, just hours and hours for months, pay off for something that our program hasn't seen since I've been at college. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it gives me chills. It was such an incredible night, and I think about it a lot.
As someone who hasn't heard about Arizona Mock, this is my first semester, so I never heard of that club, and I think it's so interesting. And with all the improvements that you mentioned from your first time you were in the club till now, I can see that it grows into a person, and you can use it not only in the club but also outside. So what would you tell someone about Arizona Mock that doesn't really know what the club is all about?
Yeah, well, first off, welcome. It's your first semester. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
But when it comes to Arizona Mock, I think that the biggest thing that people don't really think about or really know when they hear about mock trial for the first time is that you don't have to be a pre-law major to join mock trial. We have so many different people who join mock for a variety of reasons, whether that's because they do want to go to law school or because they want to work on any one of the skills that we've talked about. But also, I think that it's so important for students when they're coming to the university to really find a community here. And mock trial is, in my opinion, one of the really best places to do that. Because where we are now as a program, we've become... It's very cliche to say that we've become like a family, but I really do think that that's the case. We have really made this environment where people are able to push themselves beyond their limit, but know that at every step of the way they're being supported. And I just think that's truly wonderful. For people who don't know, mock trial, we basically just do simulated trials with case information that we're given at the beginning of the year. Some people act as lawyers, some people act as witnesses, and then we put together this basically fake trial that we then compete around the country. And obviously, like, that does sound daunting, especially if you're not into law. But yeah, I would definitely encourage people who are not necessarily pursuing law, or if they don't know that they're pursuing law, to think about it. Give it a chance if they have the time, which I will say it is a rather large time commitment, but it definitely pays off in the community and the skills that it fosters.
In the future, are you planning on going to law school?
I am, yes. I am currently working through my law school applications, so that is a right now problem for me.
Oh my God, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you said that joining the mock trial club you don't only have to necessarily be in the law program.
Right, yeah.
You can be outside the law, and if like kind of you're passionate about public speaking and just the stuff that like the lawyers do and everything, then you're welcome to be part of the club. And you mentioned earlier that like it's a time commitment whereby it's like 3
Yes.
hours each week and about like 9 hours per week that you're supposed to do.
Yeah, we have 3 different practices, and each practice is 3 hours. So it is about 9 hours total that we're practicing a week without factoring in the additional hours that people will spend outside of practice. So I definitely, I have to say up front that it is a large time commitment, and you have to know that going into it, but the payoff is just, it's remarkable. It's definitely worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what kind of fun traditions or socials or team activities do you guys do outside of competitions?
Let's see. We have a few different ones. Yeah. One of my favorite ones is we have what's called a returner buddy program, where for new members to join mock trial, they have to audition. And we know that process can be really daunting. So what we do is when members are getting ready, or potential new members are getting ready for their audition, we will pair them up with one of our returning members who basically acts as their mentor for the entirety of the audition process. They'll help them with the content that they need to prepare. They'll answer questions about mock trial. They'll set up meetings with this person to make sure that they're feeling comfortable and that they know what's going on. And I think that's pretty, oh my gosh, excuse me. I think that's pretty unique in comparison to some of the other organizations I've been a part of, both in college and in high school, because mentorship is definitely a big part of what we do in mock trial. And I really think the Returner Buddy program it's just this great tradition where we're able to welcome people with open arms to this environment of mentorship and support. So that's probably a tradition that we do that's a little bit more on the administrative side. But I mean, I guess on top of that, we have a social chair. And I think that's also something to mention, because a lot of times when we get people asking us, what do we do in mock trial? Of course, we tell them about our practices and we tell them about the time commitment and the travel, but we do still meet outside of practice. People will put on movie nights that you can go to. There will be team bonding when people are placed on teams, or sometimes people will go get lunch together after practice. So I really do think that while that altogether isn't one specific tradition, there is this concept that we're getting together outside of practice because we like being around one another. So
that sounds so fun. You're kind of more connected, like your family, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
So, like you said before, the club is 9 hours per week, which is super involved with the school. But why do you think students should join clubs to get involved with the school?
I think that the best thing about joining clubs is that you're putting yourself out there. You know, when you're joining a club, you're not just signing up to do an activity. You are getting involved with your campus community. You are learning something just in general, even if it's this vague something about what the university is and what it stands for. But you're also getting connected with people who at some level like the same things that you do, but have differing opinions about them. I think that so many times when I talk to people about their undergraduate experience, or if I'm talking to people who have graduated and they're reflecting back on what they learned during their undergraduate degree, they almost always mention how either important it was that they joined a club and what they learned from being around this community of people, or that they wish that they had done that they had been more involved. Sometimes it's definitely tough to. I mean, it's daunting to join a new club, to put yourself out there in the face of, in some cases, rejection. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. But I think if students are able to overcome that anxiety, there's so much to be learned about who they are and what they like and how they interact with people that have differing views from them, that it's a great opportunity for them to make the most out of their undergraduate career outside of just the information and the education that they're getting from the formal classes.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really true, because of recent we interviewed some people from the community, and one of them was Adelita Grihelver and other members as well, and they were like, when we were students, we were never super involved in clubs, but now we realize if we were really more involved, it was gonna be more beneficial to the work that we are doing, and
Absolutely.
It's really very important for students to realize that early. And I have also met some students who have just graduated and are like, I wish I was more involved, you know?
Right.
So I was like, if you're a freshman and you're just starting, like, take that opportunity. You have it in your hands, like, get involved and get out there. But I'm sure also, like, when you're new to the campus or when you're new to just the environment, sometimes you have that fear, like, how are people going to, you know, look at me and how am I going to interact with others? But I'll say, like, just get involved, get out there and do something. So what advice will you give to a student who is at that fence? And new students who want to really get involved but are like, how can I try something new on this campus?
I think the best advice that I can give to someone who's either on the edge of joining clubs or is like anxious about putting themselves out there or just hasn't even really thought about it is to do it scared. That's probably the best piece of advice that someone has given me, is to do something even when you don't want to. Do it when it's hard. Do it when it scares you. Do it when you're tired and you don't want to leave your house or your dorm or your apartment, and go anyways. There is so much that people can gain by saying yes or by putting themselves out there and facing either their fears or their anxiety or even just showing up for themselves. And I think for me, that's what mock trial has been all about. That's what a couple of the other organizations that I have been in are all about, is really taking that leap. Because when you're getting involved with other students or you're getting involved with your community, you're putting yourself out there in a way that's going to help you grow and learn more about yourself and what you like and what you want to do. I mean, if I had never joined mock trial my freshman year, oh my gosh, I don't know what things would look like right now. I don't know if I would have really figured out that I love the human rights and the litigation side of my degrees as much as I do. And I think that's the story of everything, is if you want to learn more about yourself and you want to learn what your future has in store for you, do it scared.
So thank you so much for being with us here today. This has been an inspiring conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
So we close. I want to give it to Nicole and Riley to say something.
I just want to say thank you for representing the trans community, because it's such a minority, and especially in college, and people can feel alone. So I just want to say thank you and taking a leadership position, and it's very inspiring.
With the current political state, there are a lot of changes legally that are going on and socially that are going on. And I mean, that's kind of been my, flow of understanding myself when it comes to mock trial as well, is I've learned a lot about like who I am and how I want to present myself when it comes to just life, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I have socially transitioned at this point, but medically there are definitely some barriers to it, whether or not insurance will cover it, whether or not that will become a larger political and legal barrier. So everything's a little bit up in the air for sure.
There are a few things I want to hit on since it was a little bit off. I really appreciate what you said about the fact that you need to do it scared, because there are a lot of people that are hesitant to do anything in life because they never had that opportunity. Another thing with public speaking is nervousness. It never goes away. The professor I'm in right now has told me, with all the stuff she's done, it never goes away. It's always there. It might just be in the back of your mind, or just that little hint in your gut saying, you don't need to do this, you can go away. But the fact that you stand up there and do it is what really changes your perspective on life. And again, I do appreciate that you're willing to come out and talk openly about your transition. My cousin for a long time was really hesitant about talking about it. And it took years for her to even tell everyone else. It's a scary thing to do, but it's always about how people are going to look at them. But they always think that no one else is going to appreciate it.
I definitely agree. I mean, I think that was, for a while, it was a big thing for me as well. And everything keeps tying back to the things that we've talked about, where it's like, do it scared. For me, even in law school applications, it's always this question of whether or not people will think of you a different way, or if it's going to impact X, Y, or Z. But for me, and for a lot of other people in the trans community, or even just the queer community as a whole, it's such an integral part of ourselves, whether it's their gender identity or sexual orientation, that hiding it does so much more damage and causes so much pain than obviously when it's safe to be out, to come out. I think that one of the pivotal moments for me in really realizing that was a conversation that I had with someone who's now become my mentor. His name's James. He's one of my coaches in mock trial. And I remember when I first joined mock trial, one of my big anxieties was whether or not it would be okay or whether it would cause problems if I were to play a witness that was openly gay. Because in mock trial, they don't decide like the gender or the pronouns of witnesses. It's all up to the students. But I just remember being so anxious, being in this new place and thinking about like actually having to come out. At that point, it was about my sexual orientation, but it was very similar with like my transition with my gender identity over the same period. And I remember reaching out to my first coach ever. I emailed him and I asked him whether he thought that it would be okay. And his response to me was that he had not pretended to be straight in over 20 years, so there was no reason that I should either. And that's always stuck with me. It's that same idea of doing it scared. When it's safe to come out, when you're not going to be in physical danger, I think there's so much that the trans community and the queer community can value and can get out of their life when they have the opportunity to express themselves and to just live truthfully to who they are. That it's been really awesome to see how accepting the university community is, but then also to be in a position where I'm able to create those opportunities for other people, whether it's by here talking about this on a podcast or being very openly queer and trans in a leadership position in a club. I think it's very important. So that's a very long tangent for commenting on what you mentioned.
That's great, because there are a lot of people that were in the position of fear. Like in professional sports, there have been a lot of people that have wanted to come out as openly gay or anything like that, and they're scared that people aren't going to accept them, whether it's their parents, the fans, their teammates who are supposed to be their family. And it can really impact people in that type of way.
Absolutely. And I mean, to be completely frank, it is scary times. There are a lot of conversations that are happening in the political sphere or even just online that it's scary as a trans person and as a queer person to see where these conversations are going and how people are being treated when they do come out, especially with the conversation around sports right now. But I think that also at the same time, when we're able to find community, whether that's just in your life as a queer or a trans person or any minority at that point, or if it's in the university community where it's a little bit easier to be able to look around you and see where we exist. Once you see yourself having that representation and you see yourself existing through other people in different spheres, it makes a world of a difference. And that's part of the reason I want to go into civil rights litigation. I think I want to see more queer and trans people in law, and I want to help protect other people who are not in the same position as me to continue to live their lives, because people have the right to exist. That's not up for debate. And yeah, representation is important, but so is finding yourself in various communities.
I completely agree. And on a little joke, you've seen Suits, right?
I have seen Suits. I watched it obsessively my sophomore year.
It's a good show, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about it right now.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
The law thing.
Yeah.
Mike is an uncharacteristic character, but he's a fun character.
Very
and that
true.
Mock trial that they had, is that an accurate representation of what goes on, or is that more of the fantasized Hollywood type?
I think it's a little bit of both. When we're talking about the specific episode where they had a mock trial, there were a lot of similarities where you have someone who is pretending to be a lawyer. At that case, they were basically doing a mock trial for a real case that they were planning on litigating, which actually does happen. Which, fun fact, at Georgetown Law School, or I think it's Georgetown University Law Center is their official name, a lot of the different attorneys that are going to go argue in front of the Supreme Court will do a mock trial at Georgetown in front of the students, which is really cool. Just a fun fact. But that being said, I think that there is some truth to that episode of Suits. There is someone who's going to be pretending to be an attorney. There are people that are going to be making objections. There is someone who's going to be pretending to be a witness and a judge who's ruling on all of this. But it is definitely dramatized in Suits. Though I will say, mock trial can get kind of dramatic sometimes. We have dramatic witnesses and there are dramatic moments, but it is a little different for sure when we're doing it.
Does it often extend that long? Because in that episode, I think it took 3 days for them to actually finish it.
Yeah, so thankfully, shout out to the American Mock Trial Association for making these rules, but we actually have a time limit on all of our content. For each team, when they're presenting their case and bringing up their own witnesses, they have 25 minutes when they're talking to speak, and then they have 25 minutes to basically examine the other side's witnesses, and then speeches have certain limits too. And then in some, including objections and content and speeches, the entire trial cannot go longer than 3 hours. Which, not gonna lie, 3 hours, it's still a hefty amount of time that you're up there memorized and you're making arguments in the moment and you're being responsive in speeches and how you're talking about everything. But I do appreciate that it is not 3 days, it is 3 hours per round, and like a typical tournament does have 4 rounds. So that's 4 3-hour tournaments or rounds that happen over the course of 2 days, which is nicer than the one that they show in Suits over the course of 3 days.
Yeah, that looked really stressful.
Yeah, it does look stressful in Suits. And I mean, I have to admit, it is stressful in real life too, but I can't imagine that it would be quite as stressful as litigating a real issue that you're then going to be going on that directly impacts you like it does in the show.
No,
So
yeah, it just sounds like there's a lot of you can gain from mock trials. Not only the fact that you're going to be public speaking, which every single time you go up on that stage, it becomes just a little bit easier.
Yes.
But also the memorization and the fact that you can stand your ground while doing it.
Right.
You can only be so successful as a lawyer if you can't stand your ground.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think learning to carefully phrase your arguments in kind of the legal jargony way so that you're learning the terms that you have to know, but even just learning how to make an objection when you hear something that shouldn't be said and then argue something in the moment. It's the same skills that you need when you're standing up for something that you see isn't right. And I really love that mock trial cultivates that.
It's a good thing to have.
Definitely.
I'm doing a story about droughts, so I picked a botanical garden. I had to argue for the botanical gardens because it wasn't what my professor was thinking about. And I think in that way, it's somewhat similar, because if I didn't fight for it, I would have never found the new thing that I got.
Right.
So in every aspect, sometimes knowing when to fight for something is far more beneficial than holding back.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely a balance, because knowing when to fight for something and then actually doing it, that's one skill, and it's difficult. But I think once you've learned that skill, sometimes the hardest thing is also knowing when not to argue and when not to take that opportunity. Some things that we talk about when we're preparing our attorneys to go compete is we know at this point that our attorneys, they're prepared. They know the different rules when we're in court. They know what they can object to and what they can argue to with the judge. But it's not always going to be useful if they take every opportunity to do so. Because if you are constantly interrupting the other side and you're making objections, it's going to get so tedious because you're arguing over and over again. So I think finding that balance, whether it's in mock trial or real life, of knowing when to stand up for something and knowing that you do have like the ability and the power and the confidence in yourself to argue for that and argue for something you believe in, while at the same time knowing where the middle ground is between you and the other side and when arguing will be beneficial. It's really important, and it's tough.
No, yeah. I think that's what I have for now.
Awesome.
And I do appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been, I think, one of the engaging conversation and so inspiring as well. And I hope more students to realize this early, mostly those ones who are just joining school, studying the University of Arizona for their first year, to join mock trial, because you're getting a lot of experiences. You're also getting so many skills, not just public speaking, like what we said. And at the end of the day, at the end of your 4 years here, you will have learned different great skills that can help you become not only a better lawyer, but also a great advocate in the community. So we will be having also a student panel this semester, and we will hope to have you again and also have you on more other conversations.